Time to talk Noles and Yellow Jackets. Which offensive players for the Ramblin' Wreck should you know?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. Appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles football with me. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Today's show is going to be fun because it is game week. It is officially time to break down the first football game of the 2024 season. Today, going to talk about the Georgia Tech key offensive players to know, skill guys, offensive line, tendencies, how the matchups work, the whole 9 yards. Going to have a lot of fun with it, so let's get started. First off, top of the board, quarterback, Haynes King. This is a dual threat quarterback, and his statistics make it so. He's such a good runner. In fact, I'm going to bring up his stats with his feet prior to him throwing the football, and he can definitely do both. Last season, Haynes King, 120 carries, 737 yards, 6.1 yards per tote, 10 touchdowns on the ground. Most important to know about him, when the Yellow Jackets reach the red zone, they will absolutely call his number. A naked bootleg, a rollout where he has a two-way go. If he wants to take off, by all means, he's as good an athlete as there will be on the field. Size, strength, length, all the attributes you could look for. He's a guy that probably could have played college football as a receiver. He is a very good athlete. As a passer, 226 of 367 last season, 61.6%, 7.7 yards per pass attempt, 2,842 yards, 27 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. Now, I've talked about Haynes a number of times on this show in regards to why I think he threw the picks he did, etc. But I'm just going to give the 10-second synopsis here. He throws too many because he forces balls when they get behind, because their defense gave up a lot of points last year, especially because their rushing defense was abysmal. That's not really all his fault, but he does have to be more careful with it. Considering Florida State's pass rush and considering their ability to blitz, having a lot of really quick linebackers, the safety position's athletic, he's probably going to see a lot of different looks against Florida State. They've had the entire offseason to prepare and come up with a game plan. So he's going to see basically the kitchen sink thrown at him, as the proverbial saying goes. With that, he's still going to make plays. He is one of the most dynamic players in college football, definitely one of them in the Atlantic Coast Conference, and he is capable of beating Florida State. They beat North Carolina last year. They were very close in the Georgia game of all games because of him in part. This is a dangerous football player. If Florida State's players do not take him seriously, and I guarantee you Norvell and his staff do, he will burn them. Now, what are the areas that Florida State has an advantage over Haynes King? Number one, I still need to see it as far as the Georgia Tech defense being really good, not just mediocre or solid, but if they have to play from behind, that's going to conjure up bad thoughts from last year when he had to make plays and he probably tried to force too many. Very competitive guy, has a lot of confidence, that's fine, but he will force the football. It is fact. If Florida State gets a lead, that is a concern on the Georgia Tech side. Number two, this is a guy that, quite honestly, is a big play threat. They were top 20, 25 in plays of 40 or more yards passing the football. They hit big plays. But again, sometimes he gets a little bit too much into let's make a play, not hit the check down or something, and it's kind of random. You don't know when he's going to do it. So on the other side, if he does throw one of those really poor decision passes, the Florida State defense has to come down with it and make a play. Don't just catch it and fall down. Certainly don't drop it. Catch it, try to make a play, and change the scoreboard. Florida State is certainly capable. They got a ton of defensive backs that are really good, linebackers that can run, and the front, without question, is going to go out of its way to get him on his butt. My only other concern with that, though, goes back to his legs, and it's why I led with this. Haynes King can run. It's not always design runs or RPOs where he takes off. If you fail to hold him into the pocket, think of the game last year at Boston College. Florida State was pathetic at keeping Thomas Castellanos pinned in. It was completely random when they stayed in the rush lanes for much of that game, and it cost them. They should have won by 20, and they seriously could have ended up losing. It was on them. Too many poor plays on defense. If you do it against Haynes, this game will nowhere come close to what the betting lines are. Anywhere between 11.5 and 13 points are the numbers that I've seen and heard about. I don't think it'll be that way if you don't keep him in the rush lanes in the pocket, because he will get outside there and throw or run, if not both, and make big plays. To that point, before I forget, ESPN's Bill Connolly, his SP Plus, he picks Florida State, just for what it's worth for the people that know. Florida State 39, Georgia Tech 20. I don't know if it'll be that big a margin, but Connolly's really good at this stuff, and ESPN wouldn't hire him if he didn't know something. The key here are all the transfers, all the new players that Georgia Tech has. They've got a key recruit who I know, ironically, coming in at running back who's going to play some. They have some guys that coming back off injury, a lot of different things. If those players, again, this is game one, so it's really hard to project, if some of those guys added to the Georgia Tech offense take a step up, that's good news. But more importantly than the transfers that they have, more of their transfers are on defense that are key. It's getting a guy back healthy at receiver, adding Anthony Carey at running back. They've got 4 guys that started the majority of their games on the offensive line, and this is a unit that is explosive at receiver. I'm curious to see how Florida State matches up. It kind of does the opposite of what most teams do. They'll take the challenge. Like, just as a reminder, Norvell handed out the depth chart on Sunday of game week, game one. Most coaches wouldn't even consider, like, they would get angry if you even mentioned that. Bring it up, or you're going to bring a depth chart. Like, I'm serious. They don't want to even, the word injury or depth chart, those are 4-letter words to them. And it's just unfortunate, but that's just the way college works. Coaches are very, very difficult to get stuff out of. And I've said it many times, Norvell doesn't give a lot of info. Well, he's dropping the depth chart. He's also dropping a lot of other things that are important too, giving some details in his last press conference that he was giddy. Well, I'm curious if he's going to be giddy about trying to stop Georgia Tech's offense, because, again, they got some players. Coming up next on Locked On Seminoles, we're going to discuss some of the skill guys and how they can match up with them, some of the opportunities Florida State has to take the ball away. That's next on Locked On Seminoles. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September the 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with your YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every single regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. Also, with the opportunity for this season to get rolling this weekend, do not miss out on the chance to get on board with Locked On College Football. We've got all our previews and everything coming up. SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12. Get it right here from Locked On's stable of college football experts by subscribing to the Locked On College Football podcast. Who has a chance to make the playoff? What teams will cause chaos in their conferences? Changing everything in those for the race to the playoff. Everything you need to know all in one place at Locked On College Football, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Which players should Georgia Tech have come out against Florida State and make plays? That's what everybody wants to know. Can they? Do they have several, etc.? The answer is a little bit of everything, to be honest. One of the key guys that I'm curious about is a big receiver. I want to start with him. Coming off injury, missing last year. 6'5", 220-pound wide receivers do not grow on trees. The player I'm about to mention, I do not think will start, but he is a different kind of guy. Not necessarily one that Florida State doesn't have, but a lot of their opponents don't. Florida State is known for big receivers. Georgia Tech, much more about speedy, quick guys around 5'11", 6 foot. Not this guy. So let's talk about the difference in their style of receivers and why Florida State has to be careful, because they will go up top and they will beat you. They can also beat you with screens. The player in particular I'm talking about is Blackburn, 6'5", 220. He had like 7 catches a couple years ago. ACL injury, bad, missed last season. That's unfortunate, but he gets a chance now to come back. Again, they don't have a ton of guys that I'm like, okay, in the red zone, like a Keon, like a Johnny, those guys are a pain for any defense coordinator. You can only put one guy way out wide if you line them up out there. There's just no freebie. You can't put 2 guys out there. The math doesn't work. This is the one guy I'm curious if he's that level of player. I don't know enough about him to say, but he's somebody to watch. If Florida State gets into a situation where this guy or somebody else gets going and they're just kind of passing around to different players, mixing it up, that's one thing. But in the red zone, again, you can almost tell them what's coming. And if you got a 6'5" receiver, it's hard to stop it. The other guys for Georgia Tech that I'm really curious about, Eric Singleton tore it up last year. He was their leading receiver as a freshman. He's like 180 pounds, 5'11", really quick, twitchy guy. Malik Rutherford's another really good receiver. He can really, really run. He's a kid from Miami. Christian Leary's a kid from Orlando that originally started out at Bama. He can absolutely fly. I saw him in the state championship against St. Thomas Aquinas a number of years ago. That is a guy coming off the bench that's a really good player. I'm not sure how they're going to mix the rotation, what they're going to do, if they're going to change many things. But this game is important to them as a program. And to be honest with you, they came close on some big games last year. So if they're going to get over the top against Florida State, they know they got to score in the 30s. They're not going to win 24-21 in this game. I mean, barring something very, very unlikely happening over in Ireland. So I think Eric Singleton, you got to take your chances doubling him if you're going to double anybody. But again, Malik Rutherford, this kid Blackburn, I'm curious if they can't get some of those guys going. They have enough size and speed combination. You combine it with Haynes King, that's really good. Running back, arguably the best runner in the league. Hampton up at North Carolina is who I would vote for. But if not, just based on last year's productivity, I would go with Georgia Tech. Jamal Haynes is really, really good. I would say he's a guy that's going to end up playing a few years in the NFL. He's not just going to have a cup of coffee. He's going to play. Over 1,000 yards last year behind a very veteran O-line, which I'll go over. He can catch as well. He had 20 catches last year, so not too bad there, but really, really athletic. 174 carries, 1,059 yards, 6.1 yards per tote, 7 scores, 151 yards, and a touchdown through the air on those 20 receptions. Georgia Tech will get him the ball any way they can. Do not be surprised if Jamal gets the football in the slot. They might move him around. They might use him as a motion man. There's going to be wrinkles of some kind. Either Florida State hasn't seen it all or is at least not positive how it's going to happen. First game of the year, you're going to see those things. You might see a couple of trick plays. You might see a reverse pass like handoff that Jamal, quarterback, wheels around and goes down the sideline. Haynes King's a threat to score if he gets the ball anywhere. Throw it back to him. Anything like that is possible. They have nothing to lose. They are the underdog. Florida State's defense has to be ready for that. When Georgia Tech wants to line up and pound it, however, this is what's really intriguing. This is an offensive line that really solidified itself last year. And hats off to the Yellow Jackets. They're really good. Left tackle, freshman All-American last year. Ethan McEnany, 6'4", 310, had 8 starts. That's one of the better players in the league. He's a guy that has a chance to play on Sundays one day. It's just not very often that a true freshman can be a left tackle. He's good, but he is going to be going up against 2 elite defensive ends as starters, and the depth is not going anywhere for Florida State either. Curious about that. Joe Fusel, 6'6", 315. He's the left guard. He led the offense in snaps, 886. He can play. Weston Franklin, he's the center, 6'4", 310. He was second on the team with 884 snaps for the offense. That is awesome that you have that many good players coming back together. And then also the right tackle, Jordan Williams. He's a guy that played a bunch of football. He got banged up, missed a couple of games, but he's pretty much a starter. The right guard is a transfer in from the lower level of Division I, started 17 games the last 2 years, doesn't quite have the experience that these guys have. But overall, Georgia Tech's offensive line is pretty good. Miami, Florida State, Georgia Tech, maybe Clemson. I don't quite think they're to that level. But one of those four is the best offensive line in the league. You can make an argument that Georgia Tech is. They got, at least in the stars. I don't know if they have the depth that Miami or Florida State have. I don't know enough about them. But the starting unit is very experienced. They play together, and this should be a good unit. If Florida State screws around with them, that's going to be a problem because they'll run the ball on you. They would try to get you in a situation where Haynes King becomes an option on those 3rd and shorts to be a runner or a passer on the edge. You've got to slow them down on first down. If Jamal averages 5 yards a carry, it is a problem. If he even averages 4, it could be somewhat of a problem. I'm curious on 2 things with that. First down running average for Jamal against Florida State's front. And secondly, does Haynes King have any broken play where he takes off? Maybe it's just a straight drop back. Doesn't see anything. Somebody's out of the rush lane, and he takes off. You can't give up a 40-yard play, especially a 40-yard touchdown, on a broken play. And Haynes King could make that happen. Again, first down run defense is key. And on all plays, keeping Haynes King inside the pocket and contained, meaning you can't be in a rush lane up the middle either. That is the most important thing to do. It'll be the same thing when Florida State plays against Klubnik when Clemson comes to town. Same thing when Florida State goes to Notre Dame against Raleigh Leonard. They've got to do a better job this year with the rush lanes. It's probably the biggest problem and one of the reasons that the defense didn't do quite as well as they should have in rush defense last year. Quarterbacks cannot give them big plays. Coming up next, we're going to talk a little bit more matchup, Florida State, Georgia Tech, and we're also going to kind of preview a little bit more of what's going to happen in this game, first game of the year in college football. That's next on Locked On Seminoles. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, also keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. All the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen of the day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. It's a lot of fun. Now go check out my buddy Spencer McLaughlin over at Locked On College Football. Make sure you subscribe to his podcast. He's got everything covered from NIL to the big games, transfers, and everything else that's going on, including Florida State's lawsuit with the ACC. Part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Check out Locked On College Football. So let's discuss some matchups and some things that I think Florida State will do. These are just opinions. This is not necessarily stat driven, but again, with the first game of the season being teams that are at least somewhat familiar with each other, and a lot of these kids grew up with each other, played in all-star games, etc. Georgia Tech and Florida State are not that far apart. This is a game of familiarity. So, number one, everybody has seen Haynes King. He's played a lot of football, played at A&M, then transfers to Tech. You know what you're getting there. Contain, contain, contain. There is no other word. If he throws for 300 yards and he's throwing dimes, you tip your cap. If he runs for 80 yards and even one score, that's on Florida State. This is one of the fastest defenses in the country, one of the most veteran defensive lines. It has depth. The linebacker corps has a little bit of green to it, but they've got a couple of starters that are veteran players and with a lot of athletes behind them, and then the secondary is loaded. There is no excuse to give up big plays to his feet. The big plays to the air, there's nothing that stops a perfect pass. I get that. But you cannot allow him to beat you with your feet. So a couple of points there. And then I'm going to guess they're going to have something that I have no idea as well. Number one, I think they're going to play a base defense. They're going to see if Georgia Tech can run the ball on 1st and 10. They're going to try to take away the flanks, not allow outside bootlegs, waggles, any kind of option play or anything they might try to do to get Haynes outside the tackle box. That's what I would do. Play the defensive ends wide, force everything to the middle of the field, funnel it. If you get plays headed back inside to Cryer and Nicholson and all the guys that are going to be coming off the bench, along with the starters, obviously DJ Lundy, kind of the mainstream guy in the middle. Whoever it is that's starting, whoever it is that's in the lineup in the middle, they have to tackle well. The good news, that plan, and one of the main reasons I bring it up, arguably the best one-on-one tackler in all of college football plays for the Noles, that's DJ Lundy. He's really good in one-on-ones. If he plays up to his capabilities, look for him to have a couple of tackles against Mr. Haynes King that some other guys would probably miss around college football and maybe even NFL. It's important because once he gets going, he can fly. Second part, I think they're going to have a very diverse blitz package. He had all summer. You're going to show something in this game they did not see, just like Georgia Tech's going to do to Florida State. It has to work. This is the part where I don't like to do this, but it is what it is. Players play, I get that. But you need a play where you outsmart them. Georgia Tech has a good staff. They really do. By the way, a former Florida State Seminole at quarterback, hint 2000, who won the Heisman, is their quarterback guy. This quarterback coach, you might know who that is. He is going to take this game very serious. He's playing his alma mater. Florida State needs to get after Haynes King, not just with their down 4. I will be shocked if they play conservative the whole game. Early, maybe, but on 3rd down and obvious passing downs, they're going to come after him. I have no doubt. I expect a diverse blitz package. What I was mentioning a moment ago, there's going to be something they're going to show that I had no idea. A different front, maybe it's a 50 front with 3 down linemen and 2 linebackers out standing up. If you don't know what that is, go look at the Alabama-Georgia national title game after the 21 season. That's something they did against Bryce Young to try to keep him in the pocket. He's a very mobile guy that likes to throw on the run, and they tried to contain Bryce. Did a pretty good job. That might be a way to do it, but there's other mannerisms of that. You could blitz your nickel. You could blitz the free safety. You can bring him late, bring him down in the box, do all kinds of stuff. I think Florida State is going to have at least a few plays. You're looking at it pre-snap, and you're looking at the defense. You're going to be like, what is that? Good, because if you don't know, there's a chance Haynes hasn't seen it either. That's the idea. Look for Florida State to be diverse. The other thing here, it's just the turnovers. Georgia Tech is one of the most miscue, make a blunder, shoot ourselves in the foot team in the Power 4. Until otherwise proven. It's a new year. I get that. But they were turnover prone last year. When the ball comes your way, I said this earlier, you must capitalize. My 2 pet peeves, what are they? Don't hit the quarterback when he's going out of bounds. 9 times out of 10, the flag's coming. And then the other one, don't drop interceptions. It's a freebie. Haynes King might throw one up to you. He might be getting hit by somebody like Darrell Jackson. The ball just pops in the air. Capitalize on those interceptions, no matter if they're coming after him and just a down 4 and somebody gets home, or if they shift and do an overload blitz and they don't have enough guys coming. At some point, Florida State's going to do that. Maybe it's somebody like Brown coming off the slot. I don't know. They should be able to make a big play. To wrap up today, I still think Florida State's the better team, but the objective was to give you some intel about Georgia Tech's offense and how capable it is. Don't forget about that. When Florida State's defense goes out there on Saturday, Georgia Tech is absolutely capable of winning that game if you screw around. Got to capitalize on the turnover opportunities, got to get home, and above all else, if you do nothing else, keep Haynes King contained and in the pocket. Stay in your rush lanes. Let your linebackers, safeties, and corners make plays. Florida State's really good back there. That'll work out for them. Once again, thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. I truly appreciate you stopping in. It's great to have you. Love talking football. We are to the season. It is game week. Let's enjoy it. Let's talk about it. Comment on YouTube. Make any kind of thing you want to talk about. known to me. If you put up a post, I'll answer it. I'm curious what y'all think about Georgia Tech. If you have an opinion, shoot away. Also, please please hit that notification bell. Please subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already. We're available on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you get your pods for free, and on YouTube. Finally, once again, check out my guy Spencer McLaughlin over there at Locked On College Football. We got all the stuff going on with the Locked On College Football preview. I did part of the Florida State ACC preview with them. It was a lot of fun. Alex Dono, Gibbs, all those guys are all great. Let's make sure we check that out too. Everybody have a good one. And until tomorrow, go Noles.